Hi, everybody. Welcome. Just give it a few more minutes and we'll get started. This is awesome.
It is. I actually need to know how you're doing all of this. This is super cool. I don't know. Do I get to see the chats or conversation somewhere?
I'll be able to read them to you. They pop up for me so
Okay.
I can see them. So I'll kind of
Okay.
moderate questions as they come in.
Sounds good.
Hey, everybody joining. All right. Well, while we're waiting everyone to join, Nitya, I'm just going to give everybody an introduction on Jersey Shore Women in Tech. So just sit tight for a minute
Cool.
and I will give this a go. So welcome everybody to Jersey Shore Women in Tech. For those of you who have never joined us before, we're an organization that supports, mentors, and educates women in business and the tech industry. So this was initially founded by Allison and Brittany. They attended an event at Bellworks in Homedale where a bunch of women came together and noticed that there was a great opportunity to cultivate this community of people and provide support on an ongoing basis. So I'm Jen Negadio, and I'm also the VP of Product Management at Vidya. When they first started Jersey Shore Women in Tech about 2.5 years ago, they approached me to be the first official speaker, which we had an amazing turnout, and it was just such like a impactful time for both me and everyone that attended, that I just stayed involved and loved listening to the speakers month after month, learning new things, getting new perspective. And even specifically, from Allison, who's a product management lead at Define Logic, and Brittany, who now, works with me at Vidya as a software manager lead. It just was amazing, what we were experiencing together, and they asked me to come on. So now every month we plan and organize these events with different thought leaders. So there's a lot of ways that you guys can connect with us online. We're active on all social media platforms listed here. The one in particular that I highly recommend is our Facebook group. So if you go to our Facebook page, which is public, you will then see a group that you can request to join, and that is private. What we love about this is it allows us to have a great community of people sharing things that are important to them. So if you want to post about a new job you got or a promotion, any other classes or groups that you think would be valuable to the community, sharing any kind of relevant articles or maybe a blog post that you've written personally. And then the most valuable one is anybody that's looking for a job or anybody that's looking to hire someone. This community has done wonders for people that are looking for opportunity. Even if they weren't looking for opportunity, we've had some incredible success stories happen just by synergy inside of this group. Additionally, if you just want to ask for help or have a question, the community is very supportive and open in answering anything that they might be able to help on. We're always looking for speakers. We have some exciting stuff in the works for May, which we will announce soon. But if you know anybody that would be valuable as a thought leader or can bring some insight or perspective to this group, please encourage them to visit our website, jerseyshorewomενintech.com. There is an application. We also have a campaign that's running. You guys might be familiar with this. Last year, Brittany ran an amazing amount of logistics on coordinating a campaign on GoFundMe to get the community involved to support sending some young girls to robotics camp and getting them there, getting them through the program, supporting them in all their efforts turned out to be an amazing experience for everyone involved. And obviously with the feedback that we got, it was something that we felt passionate about doing again. So you can scan this little code here on the screen, but we also will include it in our newsletter that we send out after every meetup. So our sponsors are the reason that we're here. Coworks and Vidya have been amazing at supporting all of our events ongoing. Usually we are meeting at Coworks, which is a beautiful co-working space in the Lake House building in Asbury Park. They have private offices and conference rooms available. They also have private space in the high voltage building, which is by the Asbury Park train station. And the inside is just amazing. It's got this beautiful space to grab coffee, and then upstairs are all these offices that overlook this coffee shop. And they also have a new location coming in Red Bank soon. And then Vidya is where Brittany and I both work. It's a music and media tech company located at the Bellworks campus in Homedale. Vidya powers the business side of music labels and media companies. through an all-in-one platform that allows users to manage their content, their rights, payments, analytics, and revenue. We're currently looking for a senior data engineer or rights management specialist. So if you're interested, you can send us a message, but the career website at vidya.com is always live, and you can put an application through there. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you guys one of my professional heroes. You might recognize her from Asbury Agile if you guys attended that event where she spoke on self-care, which was incredible the way that she thinks about it. And then also, if you guys follow her on Twitter, she is known for doing these amazing sketch notes and how she interprets information into this beautiful visualization, and she shares this information on Twitter. But today, she's here to talk about cultivating passion with a purpose. So without further ado, I want to introduce Nitya from the North American developer relationship for Microsoft. But she's so much more. So Nitya, if you want to give more of a background on you guys, on you, and dive in, I'll switch over.
Will do. Can you all see my screen okay? Yeah? Jenna, can everyone see my screen? All right, cool.
You're live.
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And Jenna will say, you know this. I was actually very nervous about this because it's my first time speaking to a virtual audience. I'm one of those people who genuinely likes to engage with people, see faces, and do all of this. But I thought this was also an opportunity because I think we are all going through this time right now where we are kind of dealing with all the implications of social distancing that we don't have to do in normal life, right? So hopefully you'll see some of this today. So my name is Nitya Simon. A quick introduction to myself. I'm a PhD in computer engineering. I actually did my PhD decades ago in fault tolerance. I'll tell you how old I am because I did that when Corba was still very, very popular. But one of the things that the PhD taught me was really how to be creative about problem solving. Post my PhD, I went on to work in Motorola research for over a decade. So I did a lot of work in mobile and ubiquitous computing. And then I pivoted over. It kind of is not and this kind of fits into the whole theme of what I want to talk about. It's not a coincidence that the time I decided to pivot was very much around the time that my first and only child was born. And right, so as many of us, right, parenting, that's another thing on your plate. So when he was born, I decided to pivot away into web development and a lot of independent work. And then over a period of time, I had discovered community. And then at that point, I was like, hey, I want to do something more impactful with the skills I have. And then I pivoted into developer relations at Microsoft. So just a quick note about what developer relations means. Developer relations is really about being there for the developers in your community and helping interface them to the engineering teams within Microsoft. So we work with startup, student, and academic audience, student and professional audiences, and try to connect them to all of the things we're doing in cloud and AI. But enough about me. You can find me at Nitya on Twitter. Today, I'm here to talk to you about the road to Ikigai. Hopefully, I'm saying that correctly. And the core of this is we are all passionate about doing things, but how can we do this with a purpose? So the first thing I want to say is, Ikigai, the two parts of it together, apparently mean reason to live, right? So the core of the message behind it is really, do you have a purpose that is driving your life? Like, is there something that is making your life worthwhile so that if everything else were to go to hell in a handbasket, you are still just fine. You can keep trekking along, right? And in a very abstract way, you kind of wonder, what does this mean? But we're going to go into that in a minute. To me, I want to start with a very simple question, right? This is a trade-off every single one of us has had at some point in our life. We've all been there. It's really about balance. One side of you is like, there's a ton of things you would love to do if you have the time, right? If you have the time and there was no constraint, you didn't have bills to pay, you didn't have kids to take care of, you didn't have jobs calling you, there are things you would do that would make you genuinely happy. But then there are things you need to do to get paid. In other words, you need to do things to keep you financially and emotionally stable, right? So we've all been there. And the question we're really asking today is it really possible for us to have everything, right? Can you end up in your daily life doing what you love to do, get paid for it, and then find out like you're actually working on things that you're good at and that somebody needs? In other words, it's useful to someone in your community. And this is actually what Ikigai really means. So this is a very kind of popular Venn diagram that you might see if you ever Google the term. And I'm going to take a couple of minutes to kind of zoom in and break it down. So this is actually comes from the Japanese culture. And the idea is that the secret to longevity and kind of really being happy with the work you do is to find this niche where you're balancing various aspects of this to kind of grow into a point where, you're always happy, right? So you think of this in terms of those four, but we're actually going to think of it in terms of what those mean, the intersections. So the first thing, we all hear a lot about passion, right? Everywhere you go, and I'll talk to Jen a little bit before this, the shelves are full of self-help books that talk to you about just, pursue your passion and you'll be successful. We all know this is not true. Passion alone is not going to get you to the top of whatever it is you want to do. But what does it mean? According to this, and I actually do agree with it, passion is at the intersection of two things. It's what you really love to do and what you're good at. If you love something but you're not good at it, then it'll actually frustrate you. But if you're good at it and you don't love it, then you're really, really going to be very, I wouldn't say frustrated, but you're really kind of like, this is not my life, but sure, I'll do it. And you need another motivation, right? So passion is when both of those needs are met. Mission, on the other hand, is kind of going over to the other side where it's something you love and the world needs it. And the reason that both of these are important is there's nothing to do with payment over here right now, right? When you think about a mission, it's like you really want to do something that you love and you have found a purpose for it. You have found someone in the world that needs it. You feel like, hey, even if no one pays me, but I do this and it's altruistic, I'm helping someone. That gave me my reward, right? So that's cool. The bottom side, on the other hand, is really about payment, right? It's like, hey, if I'm paid to do this, what does that mean? And so if you're good at something and you're paid to do it, that's probably your profession. It's kind of the things that you are going to build a career around. But if you're doing something that you are kind of, the world needs it and you're being paid for it, it doesn't matter what else is there. It's a vocation because, hey, there's a social good aspect. I'm already being paid for it and I'm going to get a feeling of having achieved something. So there are these different balances, right? But what I want you to actually focus on is the purpose. We're talking about purpose, right? There's passion, but what is the underlying purpose for each of these? If you break it down, passion invariably at its core is about self-esteem. You're doing things that make you feel good about yourself, that make you feel valued, that make you feel. So if it's something you're really good at, but just love a little bit, it's still okay because you feel like you're mastering something. Hey, I'm getting better. That's self-esteem. Mission is about altruism. You really want to feel like other people are appreciating your contribution to a bigger cause. We all want to feel like we belong. So there's a notion of altruism and belonging when it comes to mission. And when you think about vocation, it's really about purposeful work. And I'm making the case for purposeful work because purposeful work means at the end of the day, you know what the value of it is. And I'm going to periodically segue off into stories because this is how I like to talk. I'm not sure how many of you have ever read Dan Ariely's books. Dan Ariely is a behavior economist who works out of Duke. And he does this really great talk on purpose and kind of like motivation. And the thing he'll talk about is this bionicle experiment. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it goes like this. They go to do a study in a college and they give people a bionicle, like something to assemble, right? There are two groups of people. The first group is given this. They're told to assemble. For every one they assemble, they're given a certain amount of money, right? But the difference between the two groups is this. In the first group, the person looks at the completed one, says, and gives you the money. And then you go off and do another one. And every time they look at it and say, great, good job, and they give you the money, right? The other group, the guy says, and in front of your eyes, he dismantles the whole thing, throws it in a bin, and gives you another one to do, right? And they looked at which one of these scenarios causes people to do more work, to build more. And it's you probably can guess, right? The one in which you feel that, hey, someone acknowledged your work. You did something, they acknowledged it, they said that's valuable, even with money or not, you end up doing more. But in the other case, even though you were paid, but the person was like, yeah, you did this great, I'm going to break it down, and took the meaning away, you wouldn't do it as much. So for me, that's the whole vocation part. It's really about, is there a purpose to the work you are doing beyond just the payment? But when you come to the left side, the good and paid, you really want to motivate yourself by saying mastery. Everything I do with every passing day, if I'm building more knowledge and building more skills in what I do, I will be fine. So the big picture is fine. We've got all these 4 buckets, and you might ask yourself, what does that actually mean to my career, right? And this is where that whole Ikigai model, to me at least, breaks down. It's a little confusing because, in a sense, it's telling you can have it all, but the reality is your priorities will shift with context, right? So at any given point in time, what is your core need at a particular stage of your career? What I mean by this is when I look back over my own career, when I started off, I wasn't there to kind of do good for the world. That's not my thinking at all. I really just wanted to have enough money to be financially independent, move out of my parents' home, own my first car, pay rent, and be an adult, right? So I was looking for it with a different perspective. But as I kind of went to the next stage of my career where I'd kind of done my education, got my first job, I was building skills, then my core needs shifted to really wanting to be appreciated, wanting to have mastery, wanting to do something that added value. And now, as I kind of keep shifting beyond that, I had a whole bucket list of goals that I checked off. Now I'm really like, the things that motivate me are, am I doing good for other people, right? So ask yourself, what is your core need before you try to jump into the model itself? And it's with that in mind that I actually want to say that the way you want to look at this is through the hierarchy of needs. So most of you are probably familiar with this, the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And what it talks about is, over a period of time, what are the things that motivate you to do the things you do? And I want you to look at this and really apply it also to your career, right? So when you think about this, and in fact, this whole talk to some extent is me looking back at a career and thinking about what were the things that motivated me at every stage. So the Maslow hierarchy basically says, hey, at the core, we all have these basic needs, right? The basic need that we have is food, water, shelter. And then after that, we want to feel safe. We want to have like stability, whether it's financial, whether it's psychological, whatever it may be. And once you've got to that stage where you've got the basic needs met, then you're starting to look for that level above, right? You want to look for community. You want to belong somewhere. You want recognition and a reputation. And once you've hit all of those, the top level is where you're like, hey, right now, I got everything. I'm trying to be more aware of who I am. And this is the original Maslow hierarchy. But a lot of people are actually looking at it saying, there's something wrong with this. It's not a hierarchy. You don't need to always do one and then go to the next. In reality, we're balancing all these needs all the time, and one of them will probably be the high priority. So I kind of want to map this into Ikigai, right? What you really want to think about is the Maslow hierarchy is these bunches of curves. At any point in time, every one of those needs is in us. One will probably have a higher priority than the other. And the way I think about mapping this onto the whole Ikigai model is that the basic thing, like basic needs, are really, am I paid for this work, right? If I'm doing something for work when I'm starting off, the basic thing I'm looking for is what are the things, what are the skills, what are the relationships, what are the aspects or like parts, character, behaviors that I can take on that will help me get to a financial stable level. Second, the psychological one is really the two parts, which are, can I get good at it, and do others need it? Because then I'm building connections and I'm building value. And the third one, the last and final on self-fulfillment, is really, do I love it? Am I mindful about the things I do? And so at this point, I kind of want to jump into the 3 buckets in which hopefully, if I share stories about the things that I've done, it might help you connect to these. So if you think about the road to this, getting to this perfect balance of all these, to me, over my 2+ decades, it's been 3 things. Every single day, I've had to build skills. Every single day. There was never a day when I could sit back and be like, man, I'm the world's expert on this. No one's ever going to question me. Wherever I go, the doors will be open to me. Never. I had to continue to build skills because the truth is that technology moves so fast that no matter how good you are, it will leave you behind, right? A very simple example is my PhD. I did a PhD, as I told you, in fault tolerance and distributed computing. My first job out of school used that skill. The first year of that job used that skill. After that, never again. I don't think I've touched fault tolerance for 15 years, right? But what happened was that the way I thought about it, right, the whole notion of the PhD was teaching you how to deal with problems and solve them. So when after the first year of getting into the job, it became like, hey, you have this new challenge. You just need to upskill yourself and move into it. And lo and behold, I was doing mobile computing. It's going to happen. So the first thing you want to do is build skills, always. The second thing is you want to build connections. The truth of it is, anyone who says just work hard and you will make it is lying, right? At the end of the day, you only get successful based on the people you know, no matter how stellar your resume, right? So when you want to build connections, you're looking at it in terms of two things: building connections to the people that potentially you can help, and then building connections to the people who can help you. And they don't necessarily have to be in this black and white, very selfish way. It's literally, that's the way it goes. If you think, in my life, I want to kind of become a professor, then you want to be very intentional throughout your career about building connections to people who are going to get you down that path, right? So you don't want to be building connections to, I don't know, someone in the financial industry, right? Even if you think they're cool, because that's not going to help you. You want to look for what are the paths to that particular end goal and build connections there. Last but not least, building self-esteem. Even after 20 years, I'll beat myself up. Ask Jenna, I was like, oh my God, this thing is going to suck. I'm going to be terrible. I have melted down on stage. I'll tell you this for a fact. Happens all the time, because no matter what, self-esteem comes from a combination of two things, right? One is your own acceptance of who you are, but the other is stressors around you. I've done entire talks on this, but the reality is that at any given point in time, we are all susceptible to having these kind of failures, right? So self-esteem is really about constantly patching yourself up and saying, this is good, I can go on, I'm fine, don't worry about me. And these three are daily. These are my daily practices. So my journey, this is literally all the different hats I've worn over my kind of career. And I want to tell you this briefly because it goes back to what I was saying about how we prioritize what is important to us. I very mistakenly on Twitter said I was going to have a slide that showed snakes and ladders. I swear to God I was going to do it, but I didn't have time to make it. But I want you to think, looking at my career, think of the snakes and ladders board, all right? Every single step I've taken was going up a ladder. And then there's always these life events that are snakes you never expect that will slide you all the way back down, right? So you're never going to be at the stage where you're like, well, I'll never need basic needs again. I'm now psychologically safe. No. COVID is a snake, right? Resets the whole equation. You don't know what you're doing. So in my case, some of these were snakes and some of these were ladders. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So when I actually started off as a researcher. So as I mentioned, I did a PhD in computer engineering. I was actually very fortunate because I worked in a lab where we had 6 women PhDs. Take that, right? And my advisors were a couple. One of them was, she was very much about making sure that all women on the team were really good with technical stuff, but also things like public speaking. I'll talk about that later. But there was one thing they told me which really resonated, which is, hey, we're going to be really, really harsh on you because it's always better that we're harsh on you in private than you get out there on a conference stage and people shred you, right? And I'm like, yes, okay, I get it now, but that's fine. So I spent time as a researcher, finished my PhD, and my advisor started a startup. So I got to see very early on what it meant to be on the ground floor of a startup. And that gave me a lot of kind of experience in the space. It also gave me a lot of stress because there is a lot of politics behind the scenes. But the good thing was that PhD led me to what was one of, I think, to my dying day will be one of the most stellar career kind of roles I ever had. I worked in Motorola research in the applied, in the applications, content and services labs, Motorola labs. And I worked in this field called ubiquitous computing, which is amazing because this was literally at the time that mobile phones were exploding. Can you imagine it? I worked in a company where because I worked in research, I got my little dirty hands on every single phone that ever went out before it could actually be seen. So we would work, build apps, etc. But the thing I want you to take away is 10 years plus there. And I wore so many hats. I never worked on a single technology for more than a year. So learn ad hoc computing. You did this, great. Let's move on. Sensors, great. Did this, move on. Now we're going to do television, right? But what we learned in the process is this idea that, hey, pivot fast, learn, build, and move on, ship it. And the thing that I took away from that particular phase of my life is how to write patents and how to work with big industries. Because at some core, we all going to need that skill, right? How do you take a problem, find out a solution, tell people why yours is better, and then figure out how you can detect if other people kind of build the same thing you do. Great. After that, what happened? I had my first and only son. This was kind of I was one of those who had worked my entire life. So by the time I got to being a parent, I was fairly old comparatively. So I had to decide, do I want to dedicate my entire life to my career, or do I want to like do something like gives me a little bit more work-life balance? I chose to do the latter. So I moved to New York. My other half worked for IBM. So I multitasked. I was a remote worker. So it was not only multitasking, but remote working. And that was the second challenge. This is what I mean by the snakes along the way, is when you're a remote worker in a company where everyone else is physically present, you have to work twice as hard to be visible. We're all dealing with that now, but I got to sense it firsthand. We're also going through this part where Motorola is getting its lunch eaten by a lot of innovation. So things were kind of changing. And at some point in life, I had to decide, what is it that I want to do? And Motorola and my team broke up. So do you want to go back and join someone else, or do you want to take a different path? And that's where I went into becoming a developer. So that was a phase where I had to take a risk in my career, became a developer and an independent consultant. And there are two things that I will talk about in that particular context, right? One is you're always afraid of something until you're in the position where you have to execute on it. So if you ever thought to yourself, I can't do this by myself, know that you will learn. So with the independent developer journey, the two biggest takeaways for me were this. One, despite the fact that it wasn't as stable a paid environment, it was perhaps the most satisfying personally because I controlled everything. The failures were mine and the successes were mine. And sometimes you having autonomy over the decisions you make is one of the strongest motivators for you to do better. The second thing that really empowered me, which kind of leads to one of the two connections that you see there, which is educator and community, is that when I became a remote worker and I started doing independent development, you are responsible for everything. There is no sales team trying to find you resources, right? You're doing all of this by yourself. So going in there and trying to like find different ways to connect meant I started working with the university campuses, started the Google developer group, did a whole bunch of things. And that led me in turn to the developer relations team at Microsoft. So what has all this got to do with that? I'm going to leave you with three things, right? So here is big road Ikigai. You have these four buckets, you have these four things. Your life is going to choose your priority in terms of what's important to you, but these three things are always true. Number one, build skill sets. The one thing that sustained me through these constant pivots, right? Whether I was remote or local, whether I was a researcher or a developer, whether I was trying to get into something that was engineering or something that was program management, you're constantly having to build skill sets and always be learning, so be fearless. I literally have to keep posting this on Twitter every 5 minutes just to remind myself, be fearless. That means, first thing, education. Build foundational knowledge. People are going to tell you, oh, you're going to need a CS degree if you want to get into tech. No, bull. You don't. All you need to do is find places and positions and people that you can engage with. So in my case, I'm not a CS person. My education was in CE. But from a very early time, I decided to go dabble in computers, go talk to people about projects, interned in a place that gave me an opportunity to build something. And then when I kind of finally got to a point where I felt like, okay, I can do something, the two most important skills that helped me were public speaking. And I can't tell you enough how important that is to build your brand, and technical writing. No matter what, kids, my 11-year-old does writing, right? We all have it. Learn to do technical writing, not in technical writing, learn to write stories and learn to do public speaking, because those two things are going to get you visibility no matter what. So build your skill sets in this. Think about what you want to learn. Find people who will give you projects, real world ones, that will give you experience. Talk about it, write about it every single time. Second, build relationships. Create connections that matter and sustain them. Right now is a really prime example, right? Jenna and I met at a conference where I was literally on stage. 2 days later or like a month later, she called me, she talked to me, and here we are doing this. This is how 90% of our opportunities take shape, right? During my entire independent stage, I never went out looking actively for a job. People found me. Why did they find me? Because I was constantly talking about what I did. I was constantly sharing stuff I built. And I will tell you a dirty secret. Hopefully, no one will get to this point in the transcript and find it. People hired me for things that I was not the world's leading expert on. I figured it out on the way. They were so confident I knew this. They were like, they thought I was the expert on something. I'm like, I'm not. They're like, no, you are. You got to come do this. Sure enough, I learned it and I did it better than a lot of people who would have been there, because when you don't know something, you're a little bit less biased. And if people put faith in you, you'll do it. So biggest thing, build relationships, create connections and sustain them. What does that mean? One, social networks. If you don't have a social profile, create one now. Be very intentional. Pick your words carefully and choose what you want it to say. It has to reflect not just the people, not just how you want to be seen, but also has to reflect the kind of people, the kind of profile that the people you want to connect to will gravitate towards. In my case, my profile will literally say three things, right? I'm a PhD, I'm a parent, and I've done a bunch of tech stuff, right? That's literally me: community, technology, parenting. And if you don't believe in those three, you're not going to be able to like connect with me. Second, professional networks. If you're going to actually try to do something meaningful, everything is a professional network. I actually did a course for LinkedIn on networking, and there was one nice takeaway in this. If you want to network with someone, don't think about what they can do for you. Think about what you can do for them and start there, right? It's very hard to go to someone and say, hey, I'm a first-time speaker. Would you be able to give me some advice on this? Instead, if you start with, I saw your talk, I've done my homework, I really like what you did, I'm trying to do a similar talk on this. Can you give me 5 minutes to kind of listen to my spiel and give me advice? You actually change it around into them getting something from you, which is they're like, hey, now they'll go and tweet about it and say, I met this person who told me my talk was awesome and I forgot all about it. Find the things they want and then use that, right? Professional networks matter. 90%, and by the way, this links into also what we're talking about, like publish all the time. Post on professional networks if you're trying to build a branding profile around the jobs you want. Again, I'm telling you this. People don't ask for proof. They look at what you've written and talked about and say, this person knows the stuff, even if your education doesn't say so. So the more you publish on these networks, the more you engage, the better for you. And then mentors and local community. In my case, as an independent, a lot of my work came from the fact I would go to constantly to local meetups. I ran conferences, local ecosystem groups. Everybody's looking for help. So going in there and kind of making meaningful connections means that if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, you'll have a really strong safety net to catch you. And last but not least, this is always the one I stop with. It's building self-esteem. I actually don't have my little notebook with me, but I've talked about this before. 2 years ago, I kind of had a complete burnout, right? I totally burnt out for a lot of things. I wonder what happened 2 years ago. I don't know. That must have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But anyway, 2016, I burnt out, right? And I was thinking through this and going, what exactly should I do? I had no interest in taking on anything new. I shut down all the stuff I was doing. Like, what do I want to do next with my life? I really have no motivation. And it turned out that it was a combination of two things. It was a combination of stress and a combination of really beginning to doubt what I was capable of, right? So when you think about the self-esteem part, there are three things that I want to say. First of all, opportunity cost. One of the things that I had done wrong is I had always assumed that everything I did when someone asked me to do it, I was trying to please others, right? Constantly trying to please others. And in that sense, I was always like kind of undervaluing myself. The opportunity cost came when I realized everything I do for someone else, I'm taking time away from my 11-year-old. Was that acceptable? And once that balance is put in, you kind of don't think about it. You're like, okay, is this as important as something that I could be doing with my son or could be doing with my career or with my blog or with this project that I love? Then don't do it. Second, create something. Sketchnoting, as Jenna pointed out, I do a lot of visual note taking. You would think to yourself that's a doodling hobby. It started as a self-care hobby, and now it has become, she herself will be like, hey, that was super cool, and I saw you do this, and I understand something. 64%, this is the number, 64% of people recall things that are creative over things that are written or just kind of like very dry, right? So to me, creating something, sketchnoting was a great thing, helps people see sides to you, but also helps you kind of find ways to keep your attention and not get distracted by a bunch of stressors in your vicinity. Third, help someone. When you get to a point in your life where you've gone beyond basic needs and psychological and you're at that self-fulfillment stage, it means that you're not worried about where your next paycheck is coming from. Pay it forward. This is really true at this time. Help out small businesses. Find people who are kind of like pivoting away into small independent gigs and try to prioritize them when you want something done, all that kind of stuff. And last but not least, I will say that this has been the hardest lesson for me. Help yourself. We've all been brought up. There's a really nice book called I think it's called Badass. Am I allowed to say that? I hope not. But anyway, in that she will talk about how we as a lot like women are kind of brought up to always, discount ourselves, but also think very carefully about speaking about money. We don't negotiate because we don't ask for money. We think it's like not a good thing. There are many different kinds of little things we do that are the product of our upbringing or the product of culture or the product of the environments that we're currently in. Journaling helps you detect and correct them. I've gotten into this practice of writing down what I did and why I did it and what went wrong. And it helps me kind of figure out, okay, next time I'll do it differently. And finally, being present. Being present is not as easy as you think. I literally have to set, like, my entire Google Assistant history is going to be alarms. Seriously, every 5 minutes, do this, right? So long story short, I kind of wanted to wrap this around, and I didn't realize I'd gone this late, but the whole notion when I started was, hey, there's this notion of Ikigai, that you can have it all, right? You can do the things you love, you can get paid for it, you'll get better at it, and you'll be helping others, right? This great, brilliant, like all-in-one package doesn't happen. But instead, if you think to yourself, no matter where you are in your life, if you give yourself a purpose for whatever you're doing at that stage, then you will always be heading towards the point where you'll get that perfect balance. So the three things we talked about: build skills, build connections, build self-esteem. I want you to walk away with this exercise that I do every single day. First, for building skills, ask yourself, what did you learn today? Today, for example, I learned a little bit about how to like use Skype with whatever software it is that you can do to run meetings. That could be a trivial thing. I learned today how to run a crawler so I could go and grab data, right? Well, one tiny thing that you learn. Every day, build a skill and then talk about it. Second, build connections. What can I share with others, right? So if you think that you want to get to a point in your life where you want to be a data analyst, build a connection with someone else. So when you write this, share it with somebody who's an expert, or share it with the community at large and say, I'm working on it. So in my case, building a connection could have been with your community. It could have been with someone who's actually trying to like get content published. Don't know. Last, build self-esteem. Ask yourself every day one thing that you're grateful for. So if you start and end every day with, what did I learn? What can I share with others? And what am I grateful for? You will find you're building yourself a brand. You're not driving yourself crazy. And at the end of the day, no matter what happens to your primary core field, you will always be able to pivot. And I think that was about it. I actually made these slides like literally before I started, so hopefully that wasn't too bad. And sorry, I went a little bit over, Jenna. Is that okay?
Absolutely. That was incredible. Like always, am so inspired by your perspective on things and your attitude and how relatable you are. I love the way that you talk about like how you got to dust yourself off and like check yourself in the mirror and say, I'm just going to do the things that I said I was going to do and make things happen. I mean, I do have a question about, that kind of like self-talk, because, there's things that you talked about, like building skills and, making connections. A lot of that comes with like a lot of risk involved, especially if you've never done it before. I myself like have, a similar, my own story of climbing up the ladder. So I've learned to take more risks now. As you know, we both mentioned we're like nervous to do this, but the both of us have done several large speaking events over our career. So it never like gets easy. You never wake up and say, I got it. So what do you say to the people that are trying to, for the first time, or maybe have taken a break from public speaking, or never published a blog, or, get offered a job that they feel like they maybe weren't prepared for? Like I used to be the head of marketing, and then my CEO said, what do you think about being the head of product? And I was like, I don't know that I'm, prepared for that. And, you spoke about how you have to like just build your skills and be confident and believe that you're like a woman in tech and, go after that. So like, what do you say to those people that are trying to weigh the risk of like, I'm going to look like an amateur, or I'm going to mess up this opportunity? Like how do I get over that hump for like maybe the first step and then ongoing?
So great question. Two answers here. First is, I think it has to depend on where you're. No matter what, I think you have to recognize that there is always going to be a certain degree or like shift in the level of control you have. So if you're a beginner, no matter what, you can't like do the same level of, hey, I'm going to raise my hand, and if I fail, people will forgive me. But in those circumstances, look for the helpers, look for the community. This is where building connections matters. You brought up public speaking, so I'll give you an example, which is my favorite thing. Make the talk happen. I actually had that in my notes. Global Diversity CFP Day happens every January. Come talk to me. If you've never done public speaking, I will help you. I'll use that as an example. There is a community-driven effort that happens every January where we all get together and spend a day's workshop getting people who've never submitted to a CFP to write a CFP and kind of write a speaker bio, get yourself ready, and then submit it. Okay? But that's not the fun part. For the past 3 years, at the end of this, I'll make everyone stand up and raise their hand and swear. It's even on Twitter somewhere, right? They all have to swear. And literally, I will say the words and they'll repeat it after me. If I do not submit to a CFP by December, Nitya will hunt me down and force me to speak at her meetup, right? And guess what? Every year I've had at least 10 people who've gone and submitted. Some of them have gone on to be international keynote speakers. It's ridiculous. And to me, this is what I mean by be fearless. We all deep inside are fearful of something. When somebody pushes us over that and you kind of are like, hey, this person knows better than me, I can trust them, they do it. They get rid of it and they're really good at it. So number one, find people like that who will push you over that fear, because you just need someone who believes in you, right?
Yeah.
And there's always someone who believes in you. The second thing, and I can't even emphasize this enough, if you're an underrepresented minority, if you're someone who's not in a position of control, keep receipts for the love of God. Keep receipts on everything. Be fearless, but keep the receipts. It's happened to me. People have come back and tried to undermine me because I will say stuff like this. And I think that if you keep that, it's actually, this is where journaling has been very helpful for me. Yes, you're not going to make it the first 100 times. You're not. But every step that you do is going to help you filter and learn and grow. And someday it'll click. If you ask 100 people, one person will give you the shot. But in the meantime, keep the receipts, because if someone comes and says, you did this and you didn't do it, you at least have that. You don't want to kind of be held accountable for things you didn't do, but don't be afraid to do the things that you want to do because you think someone will laugh at you. And I think that's the third thing that my dad used to say. I forgot, and I still have to grow into it. He was like, thick skin, cool mind was his thing. And that means that at the end of the day, it ties into self-esteem. We are all very afraid of what society thinks of us because we think that if we fail and we laugh, that's going to destroy us forever. I'll tell you a story. My PhD at a candidacy stage, I actually flunked my first candidacy. And the most, meaning like you have to go through this thing where you're like, there's a battery of professors who like meet you and ask questions. I flunked it, I had to take it again. The most bizarre thing is that the different people, the professors would come and talk to my advice, and one of them would be like, she's amazing, she's like natural, I don't know what the problem. The other one was like, she was so stressed, what happened? And they're like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? And it turned out that I was insecure about the people I talked to. I had a certain like, oh my God, I don't want to disappoint this person. And sure enough, I would disappoint them. Another person, I don't even know who you are, so I'm going to be myself. And it worked, right? So my thing here is the fear is real. Keep your receipts so that if things go wrong, you at least know you did the right thing. Find yourself a posse or a coach or a supporter who will be there for you and like push you over the line. There are a lot of people like this who are waiting to pay it forward. Hey, I'm here. Happy to take anything at all. This is why we're there. And then last but not least, at the end of the day, have that plan. Like if whatever you're doing, if you really want to go towards the destination and this has to be a step in that direction, you have to take it sometime. And the longer you wait, it's going to get worse. But keep those receipts, yes.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to post in the chat over here. I can see them and relay them. We actually had some advice from Lillian said, Write Speak Code is a great organization for pushing you over the fears of talk submissions, which that is something, like you said, everyone in their career needs to get good at public speaking. It's just about getting out there. So while we're waiting for any other questions to come through, one more from me is, you talked about publishing the things you learn. Like I know you are big about sharing the knowledge that you've acquired. So if you're learning something new, you're essentially an amateur, and then you're going to publish it for the world to see. Doesn't that like imposter syndrome usually make you feel like, am I worthy of publishing this information? Are people going to take me seriously? Are there any kind of hesitations on like not making that video or not writing that article or, not sharing this social post with the world because people might see you're constantly analyzing what other people are going to perceive? Like, how do you make sure that it's valuable for you because you're getting better at sharing and you're, expanding your brand, but also other people will find it valuable?
Okay. So I'm going to say three things. First of all, know who your audience is. So if you're starting off and you're worried, like, hey, someone might judge me, think that your audience is you, right? You want to come back, and believe me, like I've written stuff and it's not always public, but I just write it in a journal. I write it online in a blog. It's sitting there. I will come back and I will guarantee you'll come back 6 months from now, read it and be like, man, I did that. Because at that time, right, you'll be like, oh, this is horrible. And 6 months later, you'll have forgotten all the things you have to go through to learn it. And you'll go back and be like, this is amazing. That's my own thing. Like I literally half my gifts, whatever you call them, are about helping me by keeping track of the things I learned. So start off by making yourself your first audience, right? you'll never criticize yourself, right? You'll be like, this is good. And if you do great, go fix your article because you wrote it. But that's your audience. Don't try to think about other people. So that's one. Second thing, I've said this when I've talked about kind of like career change, public speaking, anything. Know that if not you, there is someone else out there who will write the same thing and they will beat their chest about it. And when you see that, you are going to cry. You'll be like, I wrote an article 10 times better than that, but I doubted myself. And here is this person logging all the credit and their stuff is crap, right? So it'll happen to you. It'll happen for promotions. It'll happen for articles. It'll happen for talks. Don't beat yourself up. Write it, right? If you really feel insecure, every platform has an unpublished link, right? So where you can write it and publish it, but it isn't searchable and crawlable. But you can take that link and give it to a few friends and say, hey, read it, right? It's there, it's published. It's just that it's not visible. So you can kind of work your way out very quietly. But last but not least, and this is a thing I always tell people, if it's public speaking is the number one fear for a lot of folks, right? The easiest way to do public speaking is to go find a talk someone's already done and recap it for your local meetup. You have no idea how valuable this is to gain experience, but at the same time, take away a lot of the stresses. Because two of the biggest stressors you have as a public speaker or a writer is really, am I getting the right content? And am I doing a good job presenting it? But if you're recapping someone else's words, you are still adding value because you're providing perspective, but you didn't have to do all the research. It's a great way to start and make it clear up front. Say, hey, this is a recap of this post. 90% of the bloggers that I know, that's literally what they do. It's like life blogs. A blog is literally a life blog. What did I do today?
Yeah.
I read this article. I saw that talk. I'm going to write about it. 3 sentences. But before you know it, you get into the rhythm and then it becomes a thing. And I think the most important thing I'll say is don't underestimate the value of your voice. One thing I have seen is as I've gotten older, my voice has become very antiquated, meaning that someone else who writes about something that I'm an expert in is actually more interesting to me because they will see it from a new perspective that I never had, right? So even if the same, like if what is Android is a beginner article and there are 5,000 articles on it, yours will still be different because you're going to come into it saying, I did my first Android program on this device for this need, and your voice coming through is what makes it unique. And you would be really, really amazed at how many people will resonate with you just saying, hey, I don't think this is a good article, but I wanted to share it anyway. And like people just rally. So do it. Yeah.
We have a great follow-up question from Brittany. She's asking, how do you know when to charge and when you know to give it away for free? Because if it's part of like your marketing budget or part of your business or something, what's the difference?
So I'll actually say it depends on what the content is and where you're trying to go. In general, because of the way we're all brought up, you're all expecting free stuff and then build the audience and then put premium content. The way I would think about it is if you have an established audience in something, then you can start gating it. However, always think about it in terms of building everything you do into 2 parts, right? There is like the equivalent of the teaser article. You should always say, hey, here is the big picture of what I'm doing. And then there is the thing that you're asking for payment for. So if you're going to write a tech article, for example, the free blog post could be, hey, here is a challenge and here are the ways in which you can address it. I did all of this stuff. Here's a screenshot of an app I built. The premium content would be, here's a tutorial with code snippets, right? And you still are able to drive audiences around this. The other thing you want to think about is, are you making money through the content or are you making money through the connections that get driven by the fact that you are now seen as an expert on that subject? If you can balance that, then give the content away for free. And the reason I say this is that there's just way too much content out there right now. So if your end goal is to be making revenue only through content, that's not it. You're going to find it very difficult. What you're really doing with content is building an audience and asking about, where am I driving them to? So you write the blog post, you do the talks to say, I'm an Android expert. But where you're driving them to, you're driving them to your site, which says, do you want me to build an Android app for you? Here are 10 apps I've built, right? That's where you kind of get the payment. But if you are serious about trying to build content for pay, I will point you to a bunch of different resources. I don't know if O'Reilly's still doing it, but you can build courses for pay, like literally video courses, and then sell them, and then build traffic around them. So if you're thinking about that, try to pick one thing that you're really good at and slowly start building videos around it, right? That would be a great thing to go.
That's great advice. Here's another question for you. What is a good resource to learn sketchnoting?
Yeah. Okay. I did not tell you to ask this question. I just want to let
It wasn't me. It's from the chat.
Yay! So first thing, I'm trying to remember the date. It's called Let's Sketch Tech. Let's Sketch Tech is a conference that is online. It's going to be all day. And it's got a bunch of top sketchnoters. I was invited, and I'm shamelessly going to say I'm not the world's greatest sketchnoter, but I sketchnote a lot, so I'm going to be there. I'm very happy about it. But there are people there. The reason I bring that up is there are people on that who I got inspired by, right? So it's really amazing. So definitely check that out. But more importantly, prior to that, there are going to be free workshops. You don't have to pay for them. So I will send you the link and you should look it up. We are actually trying to kind of set one up through Microsoft as well. So I'll send you that link as well.
Great.
And the reason I bring that up is there are lots of resources for sketchnoting, but I kind of want you to think about what your purpose for sketchnoting is. And based on that, pick one of these options, right? If you're doing sketchnoting just for self-care, you really don't need to learn. All you're going to do is start, right? Pick a talk, start writing notes. And the biggest things you're going to learn about sketchnoting is it's a constraint problem. One sheet of paper for the entire talk. Keep practicing until you can get all your notes on one sheet of paper and you're halfway there, right? Second is Denise Yu. And again, I'll send you all these resources later. Denise Yu is the person who's co-organizing that workshop and co-organizing the conference, and she's going to help us run the workshop. She actually has her entire workshop online for free. And it's a very, very nice workshop because you start by learning how to draw characters. Then you think about the layout, how do you position things on the screen, etc. And then you go from there. There's also Julia Evans. She does zines, right? Zines is a big thing. A lot of people do these kinds of workshops. So look at that. The third most important resource is if you literally look for the hashtag Sketchnote Army. I don't post it, but a lot of people do. Look at it and literally just replicate, right?
That's awesome.
And the reason I bring this up is my talk's going to be on how sketchnoting makes you a better public speaker. And one of the things is literally about get yourself, wherever you travel with a pack of, travel with a pack of index cards. And sketchnoting is about, like, in the moment, write something down, right? It could just be in bubble letters, a word. It could be little characters, whatever, and then assemble those into your talk. You'll find it. So there are various ways for you to get into sketchnoting, but yeah, I'll send you the resources. The Sketchnote workshops coming up and the 2 free workshops.
Yeah, send me all those links. We'll put it in the newsletter. We'll send it out to everyone. Has all those resources at their fingertips. But definitely check out her Twitter because it is awesome. We got another question. How do you reboot yourself or find your passion again after you've already burned out?
So I actually was not kidding. You should go see my self-care story. I have burnt out more times than I can count. And I think the two things I would say, first of all, you have to know that you burnt out. That has been my hardest problem, is not being aware that it's a burnout. You know, we're like in this horrible society, which kind of rewards you for being a workaholic. And when you're remote working, you're not even visible. So it's like really, you kind of convince yourself others are all doing better and you like burn yourself out and you don't even know it, right? So how do you recover from burnout? In my case, it was actually 2 things. I have to find a way to focus again because it was a physical health problem for me. First of all, I was getting massive amounts of stress. It was destroying my sleep because I was getting pressure. I was like, this is not good. So I had to slow myself down. How did I find something back? Community. I cannot even tell you that one of the main reasons why I'm in developer relations today is community saved me. And what do I mean by that? I mean that everybody has 3 things, and this I do this in the self-care talk, right? There are 3 things about us that make us very, very susceptible to stress. One is we're looking for approval from others. So when you're doing things because you want approval from others, you will overextend yourself. So the first thing is put boundaries, right? I have this constraint. I'll give these examples. I think it's a baggage thing and a calendar example. So the baggage example is think that your brain is a check-in luggage, right? You're walking around and all the jobs that you have to do have to fit in the check-in luggage because then you can get it on the plane for free. But when people start dumping stuff on you, you keep taking that on. You're going to pay the $50 to make that go from carry on to check-in. Like until you were only handling your problems, you're just carrying it on. You're not paying a cost. But you start taking on other people's problems, your bag is filling up. You got to check it in, you're paying the $50. So one way is really make people aware. This is carry-on luggage. You want me to deal with this other task. You want me to deal with this other problem. You got to pay the $50 because I need to unlock my luggage and open up the space to stuff your additional problems in, right? 90% of the time people will be like, I don't want to pay $50. And you'll be like, really? So you thought I would pay it and you wouldn't? So if you think of that analogy in your head and start weighing, how much space do I have in my carry-on luggage? Then you got to think that through. And the calendar idea is really, I did this back of the napkin calculation. There's 24 hours in a day. We have to sleep 8 hours to be healthy. That leaves you 16. You have to work 8 hours. That leaves you 8. In those 8 hours, you got to drive. You have to do 2 hours of commute. You have to do your gym. You have to cook for the family. You have to like do your own kind of like watch movies, whatever. You really have no time. So you have to stop thinking of your day as elastic. This is something you'll constantly see me complain about time management. I'm trying to be more intentional about it, but think of those two. But community will save you. What that means is find people who share your principles or have something in common with you and talk to them. Sometimes we just need to be seen, need to be heard, and not feel like we're alone, right? So if you have a problem and you think, hey, this is just me, I need to handle it, no, go talk to someone, and then it'll be like, what are you doing? Why are you taking extra? Say no. That'll help get you through it. Second thing is be creative, really. It's painting. I started cooking like crazy. I think a lot of us are. Anything that you do that is semi-creative, that gives your brain the opportunity to flex will help. But most importantly, journal. Because everything in the world, if you do it, but then you let yourself relapse, yes. If you do all the changes in the world, but then you kind of like forget about it when the stress goes away, I'm so guilty of that, it means nothing. So, and to me, that's my most favorite quote to myself is forgive yourself. Like I have failed so many times. I will fall again. I know it. I'm already falling again in my self-care. I'll get up, I'll forgive myself, start again. Tomorrow's a new day. It's okay. Got it. And if you do that, then you don't worry so much about others.
Yeah, I'm getting like teary because I like feel that on like a deep level, and I know a lot of people watching also feel that. We even have a follow-up question like in line with that. Like you recognize you have a problem, you recognize you burnt yourself out, and you like used to love doing this, you used to be this driven, motivated person, and now you just find yourself avoiding it, and you're not inspired anymore, and you start taking the steps of like connecting and being more creative. How long till complete burnout to, actually
recover?
Yeah, how long does it take you to reboot?
I will tell you, it took me 6 months. And I will also say this is the biggest feedback someone gave me is I am very aware of my privilege. I'm super aware of my privilege, meaning that I am married, where I could take the time off to say I need to recover and put projects on pause, and I was okay. I have savings, I have something, I'm not going to panic. But when you think about like what's going on in the world today, if you don't have that stability, none of this is going to help you, right? At which point you really have to, in your like the mindfulness for me, like we do yoga and all of that, but that's not it. It's really educate yourself constantly and be present. Tell yourself this too will pass, but most importantly, you have to like have some analogy or vision of yourself that will get you through it. So for me, it's always thinking, hey, first of all, I'm like steel, like you can beat me up. Like I'm so stubborn, right? Half the things in my life have gotten into trouble because I will not let go. I will go tell people exactly what I think, and I will not let you kind of see me fall, so to speak. And that's got me through it. But you kind of always want to be your biggest champion. At the end of the day, no matter what, and my mom used to say this, I'll credit her for this. She used to tell me, however bad your life, look over and there's 8 million people who will switch places with you at the drop of a hat. 8 million of them. Because no matter what, you're living in this country, you're doing this job you love, you know that you have a degree, you've got all this stuff, right? And we forget it. In that moment of stress, you're only thinking of like emotionally what just happened. I feel terrible. So this notion of daily remind yourself of what's really good about you. Find one person who believes in you, and I have family. That's the biggest thing. And most importantly, like this too will pass. Time, right? This too will pass. As long as you can get through it. If you have a financial problem, then you have to like tell yourself, hey, there are things, there are help, go get help for what you need, reach out to the community. A lot of people are willing to help. They've all been through this. So that's the only place where, there's a privilege issue. I can't afford to take the time off and be like, yeah, I'll be creative, I'll sketch, right?
Yeah.
Or I can go get meds. Not everyone can.
Do you have,
it took me 6 months.
Do you have the self-care talk published anywhere online?
Yeah, I actually have. So there's more than one. The one you heard was called Hug Up for Humans, right? And that was, but I actually did the very first one. I'll send you a link. It was at EllaConf, and the reason I bring this up, the very first time, that was the most emotional talk I've ever given in my life. So if you see it, you'll actually see me choke up. It's a version of it. That was literally me after I came back from self-care, and I only did it because that conference was a very safe place.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, this happened. And I remember talking about it because to me, one of the things I felt strongly about is I was brought up a certain way. So even though, however, I would internalize all my stress, I would not ever say stuff. And then, there's like the nurture and then the culture thing. And then I was perceived a certain way and I constantly wanted to rebel against it. So yeah, that talk is online. The Hug Up for Humans is online. The slides I can send you. But there are a bunch of really nice resources around it too that I can share.
I know like that talk, I was there for that talk and a few of the viewers probably were as well, but I think there was something that correlates to this talk as well, which is kind of like goal setting, like learning a new skill or like setting a goal for yourself. In this world that we're in this middle of this pandemic, a few people commented that like you've inspired us and you should make us all solemnly swear that we'll do something and make good use of our time. But, you've also seen a lot of, articles and people saying like, don't worry about accomplishing anything because everyone's dealing with this like anxiety. So there's like this like pull between like, should I just give up and just give myself a like break, which, could then put you in a place where you're completely burnt out? Or like, do I set some sort of goal for myself and motivate myself? And I think it kind of goes back to when you were doing the self-care talk and you're talking about when you wanted to like eat healthy, but you like don't really love like fruits and vegetables, but you do like art and creativity. So you kind of tied that to your goal, so that didn't really feel like work, and it was like very rewarding for you to accomplish this day after day. So it didn't feel like hold yourself accountable, like get better, like learn a new thing. It was more of like a self-care thing that you knew that you were not only were you doing something good for yourself, you were finding a way to enjoy the process.
Yes, and I will say this is a great segue because there's a book called Atomic Habits that I just read recently, and they literally talk about it. I hugely recommend that book because I'm trying that out.
Definitely.
And they talk about it as bundling. It's like if you got to bundle something you hate with something you love, that'll motivate you to do it. And it got me actually starting to walk at this time because we're all socially, we can't go out. So I tried to like walk out, and I bundle podcast listening with walking. It's like, oh, this way I'll get through this whole book, right? So yes, absolutely. I think the bundling effect is super helpful. And the second thing is libraries are free. I forgot to say this. Libraries are our best resource. And right now, everyone is giving away a ton of like audiobooks and all for free.
Definitely.
Read Dan Ariely. I hugely recommend everyone read books by him because one of the things is we don't recognize how irrational we all are.
Oh, definitely.
All of us, we all think we are the only persons in the world that is happening to. And I'm telling you, the Instagram culture is killing us because I swear to God, and I said this on these talks, right? I'll get up and I'll be like, look at me. I'm like, I'm still in my pajamas and my hair is like this. And people are posting these beautifully curated like dishes. What is wrong with my life?
Yeah.
And then you realize that everybody else is exactly the same. They're all like, we're also built into this, have to put this polished version of yourself. So sometimes I actually go, like you might have seen a picture of me for a festival. I literally wore a sari, put on everything, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to post a picture. Never in a million years would I have done it before. I hate myself on video. Wouldn't have done it, but now I'm like, gotta do it. See what happens. We'll be fine.
Another question: what are signs you can look out for, so you don't go down the path of burnout and recognize it before it happens?
So I think for me, there was both physical and mental. So what I mean by that is the physical one is very easy. You don't sleep properly. Your pressure goes up, you're more irritable, right? Those are the easy signs. They're like early burnout. If you're really tracking this and you see a significant shift, that is there. There's also like this, the biggest thing for me for burnout was feeling unappreciated.
Yes.
That was like a signal, right?
Definitely.
I was like, wow, I'm doing all of this stuff. And it turned out that people would be like, why are you doing it? And I was like, don't you see what I've done? And, so the burnout for me was like the physical signals came earliest. The mental part of it was understanding that, hey, burnout came because you were having expectations, because you were looking for approval, because you were not setting boundaries. That took more time, and it took a lot of reading, and it took a lot of like introspection. And that's what I meant, that it helped me to disconnect, right? So one of the things I always say is declutter. Anytime, we all know this, right? If you tidy a place up, if you put things away, you get this moment of like, what's the Marie Kondo style? Like, does it,
oh yeah,
right? So it did, and it's really true about your online networks. It's people. I swear to God, at the end of the day, you have to think of everyone around you as sensors that are affecting your mental health. And you have to understand when to block and when to let them in. And so one of the things I also remember from that time is like really asking, why am I feeling like I'm so terrible? Why do I feel so worthless, right? And I have a family that I like really have to be there for. If I go, like that doesn't work, right? So I'm like, then I realized I feel like, man, I'm a failure because I can't manage one child and a job and remote work. And like, and I wanted to do everything. I was my kids. I infiltrated the PTA. I was the kids like class mom for like years. Those things made me happy. That was what was my passion. I wanted to be there and I'll never regret it. But because of that, I overcompensated, working doubly hard to make sure nobody realized, right? I was like doing this as well. And it took me a while to say, wait, it's because I'm comparing myself with someone. And the other thing is, this is the other thing I always say, over communicate everything. So one thing I've learned in the past couple of years, like, you do the smallest things. We are all built in, we're wired in to kind of rationalize what we think are our achievements, right? Mm-hmm. So I might be like, I need to like get a Nobel Prize before I'll tell you I did something, right? Or I might think that I need to publish this book before I say I'm an author.
Right.
And there's another person who writes a 4-line tweet and it's like, yep, I'm a published content producer. And it's like, really? Oh my God. And then what you do is you compare yourself and you're like, why aren't you appreciating me? Look, I wrote a book.
Yeah.
That's not what it should be, right? So to me, the biggest thing that helped me was looking at my kid and like seeing that whatever I do, he would mimic. So understanding I need to evaluate what I'm comparing myself to as success, and stopping blocking people who are really like, some of them are toxic, so I block them. Some of them are not. They're great, amazing people, but they make me feel like crap.
Right.
I'll block you too. You'll never know. Like, I'll just mute them. But I really need to find my space. And that was the thing that, like, put on your oxygen mask first. Sometimes, like, no matter how great you're going to feel at that moment that you're not that great. So give yourself space. Don't let yourself be impacted. This is why when you go on vacation, you feel better, right? You're away from all the work.
Definitely. No, I completely relate to that. Everyone follows Instagram. I love it for like an inspiration. So I would follow like a bunch of like yoga people because I was going to get really into yoga, and I would just try to do all these incredible things that other people could do. And I'm very flexible. I could do a lot of things, but I couldn't do everything that they could do. And the more I just curated this space of things that I couldn't do, the more I felt, less and less and less, until I stopped following all of these people. And then I just went back to enjoying doing yoga with my friends on like Saturday when we used to be able to go for brunch afterwards and stuff. It changed everything.
Yeah, and I'll give you a good example. If you have Google Photos, does it ever tell you like, hey, this happened 3 years ago? Right?
Yes, like a time hop or memories. Yeah.
Right. Has it ever not made you happy? Ever? Like, has it, other than like a bitter memory, right? Invariably, it's got to be, I'm like, oh, I got to remember this. And this is what to me was like why I kind of say we should all be writing down our stuff, or we should be talking, because when you look back, I guarantee you that you're going to look back on something you did at the time you were feeling like crap and be like, wow, I was feeling like crap and I did that, right?
Yeah.
What am I capable of when I'm all together?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and then you don't compare with others. You're just like, hey, I only knew 3 lines of Python before, but now I can do an entire data analysis. Wow, look at me. It only took me a year. I really, really think, and this is actually advice that I've heard from other senior folks, relentlessly promote yourself. It's not easy, but you got to do it. And I'm still not good at it, but you got to do it. Write, over communicate everything, because no matter what, and if you feel bad about it, think to yourself that there's someone out there who struggled with the same problem and is looking for a solution, and they need to find your post to help them get through it. So even if it's like, hey, I struggled with insomnia, this is what I did, it helps someone. And the third thing is, I actually now see my sketch notes. So if you look at my sketch notes, I see them as the Google Photos for my career, right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to have that pop up one day. It's a photo, so it's going to pop up and like, oh, 3 years ago I did this, but it turns out that I don't recall necessarily what the talk was about, but I recall feeling.
Yes.
Oh, I learned something today, and here are the 10 things I learned, and I just have to look at it, and I'm like, man, I learned something. And after 20 years, the biggest compliment I've ever gotten is that I can connect dots, right? Like I can take ideas from one and apply to another. And that comes with the fact that you're relentlessly trying out stuff.
Definitely.
So, yep.
So you made a good recommendation on Atomic Habits, and somebody in the chat also mentioned Lean In, which I love that book as well, still relevant today. We have another question. Any other books or thought leaders you'd recommend reading or listening to that have, inspired you?
So I'm trying to, one of the biggest things that influenced me is like all Dan Ariely's books and Daniel Pink and all of those for behavioral psychology. I love behavioral psychology because it kind of makes me understand what's going on in my head.
Yeah, Daniel Pink is good.
Yeah. Second is I was going to say Priya Parker, Art of Gathering was one of the books that really inspired me from a community perspective, because she'll talk about, and it blew my mind. You're on a meetup, right? So this is going to blow your mind too. When I first read it, she was like, one of the words in there was, and I'm paraphrasing here, that we'll all start these communities with a purpose. And as they grow, we forget the purpose and we start focusing on the logistics.
Yeah.
Holy, right? You started a community because you're like, we want to get together and read books, or we want to get together and learn this technology. And like 3 years after, you're like, oh my God, I need to order the food. And I haven't, like, do we have the, AV working? And you forget the community. You don't know people. As you grow, you've lost the connection. Art of Gathering, fantastic book. And then I like all the algorithm books because, they help me, especially bias. I'm trying to remember the names of them, but there are two of them that kind of look at what it means to have biased information in our lives. And that's more for my career perspective. I want to be increasingly aware of everything I do and how it could contribute to a growing kind of like diversity and inclusion problem, because everything is going to go towards AI. Strangely enough, I'm also going to recommend books that you would not normally do. So if you see the back of mine, you might see that Captain Underpants. So I actually drew Captain Underpants way over there. But my kid reads Big Nate and all these random books, right? Like Tintin and all of those. Believe it or not, once in a while, you need to read them. You need to go find them. Big Nate, for example, has a segment that I'm like, oh my God, this is our election. And how did I miss this?
Yeah.
But the reason I say this is we are so geared into reading these books meant for adults, we lose our inner child. Mm-hmm. Read those books. You will find yourself just laughing. You just need that thing. And it actually teaches you how to communicate with different audiences. So those are there. And then there is actually a Goodreads book list I put together. I think currently I have a couple of books. I'm very interested now in going back and understanding my culture. So there's a very famous author, writes really well, but he's kind of done the whole British Raj. So I'm reading one of those. And there's a book list out there. I'll send it to you. But Atomic Habits, Ray Dalio's Principles.
Oh, I love Ray Dalio's Principles, and Art of Gathering. Brittany actually recommended to me like a year ago. So yeah, these are all things that we definitely will collect this whole list from you, and I'll include it in the newsletter for everybody.
You should create a Goodreads book list that everyone can contribute to. So I'll just give you the links, and that would be a great way, because even I'd love to know what the community is recommending.
Yeah, definitely. I have a running list of my own, but I never really thought to aggregate it across everybody's recommended book list. But that's a great idea. We'll definitely do that.
Yeah, especially now that you can get a bunch of them on the
free on the internet.
Libraries for free. Yeah.
All right, I think that might be all the questions we had. Anybody else have anything else before we wrap? Well, this was amazing. I feel completely like reinvigorated and inspired to like get back to doing all the things I wanted to do at some point and then just gave up on. Thank you everybody for joining us. And I will obviously talk to you soon, Nitya. And I'll follow up with you guys. Brittany, Allison, do we have a link that we could post for like a feedback survey so you guys can give us any kind of comments or feedback on this event? We're planning to do another one next month. So either that link will be posted in the chat. We'll also include it in the meetup group. We'll send out a message. And and including the newsletter.
Yeah, and you can find me at Nitya on Twitter. My DMs are open. Just an open invite. If there's anything at all I can help you with, no matter what, DM me. This community did a lot for me. I want to pay it back. So, just feel free. And I might be a little lazy, but I will get there.
Thank you very much, Nitya. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
It was fun. Bye.